What happens in Afghanistan doesn't necessarily stay in Afghanistan. That's our escort just there on the other side of the river.
The whole west side of this thing was loaded with drugs and weapons.
Our visit with the Taliban is coming to a close.
There's a lot hanging in the balance right now and a lot of things that could go very wrong, which would have repercussions not just for people in Afghanistan, but really for people all around the world, potentially. And there are a number of different terrorist groups operating there. There's not a fear right now that they would pose a risk in terms of launching transnational attacks, but there is a concern that in 5 years' time they could. I don't think anybody could have possibly expected the pace or the speed with which things happen. I never thought that there wouldn't be more of a fight, to be honest, put up by the Afghan forces.
This is a sight I honestly thought I would never see.
The most striking for me was to see the Taliban, who for, years have been this vicious insurgency and launching, blistering attacks and car bombings and so many civilian casualties incurred as a result of this insurgency. To see them suddenly riding around, smiling, friendly, wanting to be on camera, wanting to give interviews, and talking in a way that sounded much more mature and pragmatic than the sort of rhetoric that one traditionally associates with the Taliban. There's no women in this interim government. There are no Hazaras or ethnic minorities in this interim government. And so there are real concerns that, yes, the Taliban might be talking the talk, but are they going to walk the walk? Both from people who maybe work directly with the U.S. military or the U.S. embassy or international organizations who are now really fearful that they could face reprisal or retaliation attacks because of their involvement with NATO forces. And then also from ordinary people who maybe had nothing to do with the U.S. while they were there, but are just fearful about the security situation and are worried that the Taliban's not going to be able to maintain control over the entire country, worried about the presence of ISIS-K and whether they might be launching more attacks, worried about the economic situation. We've seen these long, long lines outside the banks. It was a little bit scary, but it was also very interesting. I think I was one of the first Western journalists in many years to spend time in Taliban territory. And obviously a lot of journalists have been kidnapped or threatened. It was obviously unusual as a woman because the Taliban's not really used to dealing with women. And there were a few instances where they were clearly uncomfortable with my presence. I think it can be an advantage. It's a huge privilege to be able to enter like the women's quarters and spend time with them and talk to them. That's 50% of the population that my male colleagues don't have access to at all. When most people don't want to go places, the voices of ordinary people in those places are the least likely to be heard, because they're marginalized or they're frightened and they don't have access to international media or, even their own media, whatever it might be. There's two factors here. There's like the human element in terms of being worried about the future of the country. Will the Taliban be able to govern? Will they govern in an inclusive way? Will the security situation be okay? Will the economic situation be okay? Will there be enough food? Will there be enough work? All those sorts of things. And then there's also the more pragmatic kind of security threat. Like, will Afghanistan pose a security threat potentially? Could terrorist groups proliferate in this kind of an environment? And so for all those reasons, I think it's a story that the world needs to keep focused on and that journalists need to keep covering.